Here's the problem. I'm going to tell you everything that's happening from the ground, what I'm actually seeing, because what they're telling you is complete bullshit on the news, and these politicians don't have a fucking clue and they're lying. And I'll say this now, and I'll say it at the end of the video. The only thing I need from this video is helicopters. If I have helicopters, I can save lives. Without helicopters, I can't reach these people. It doesn't matter how many chainsaws and trucks I got.
In recent days, the aftermath of a severe hurricane that slammed North Carolina has caused a large controversy regarding the narratives that are being disseminated in the media and on the internet. This argument refers to the narratives that are being spread about the disaster. An individual named Jonathan Howard, who is a member of the Special Missions Unit of the Florida State Guard, made a trip to North Carolina in order to represent a philanthropic organization that is better known as Aerial Recovery. When he arrived in the areas that were affected by the storm, he immediately began documenting his findings in a series of videos that he uploaded to various social media platforms. Through the use of these films, he voiced his worries on what he perceived to be a lack of assistance from the government, as well as poor rescue operations on the ground. The videos that Howard created became extremely popular almost quickly, and they drew a significant number of viewers. The efficiency of disaster relief efforts was another topic that was brought up in debates that were sparked by these films. In the recordings that he made, he expressed his rage at the fact that the state and federal governments did not participate in the rescue efforts. His famous quote is, "I'm looking for helicopters from the National Guard." He is known for saying this. Exactly where are they located? This comment struck a chord with viewers who were hungry for information about the situation. Nonetheless, it did not adequately reflect the reality on the ground, where there were committed efforts happening to assist persons who had been devastated by the hurricane. There were reports that helicopters belonging to the National Guard were in fact performing rescue flights non-stop, bringing help to persons who were affected by the storm. This was the case despite the fact that many of the pilots were too busy to participate with social media or respond to Howard's accusations. The comments made by viewers revealed a growing dissatisfaction with Howard's approach to the matter, which occurred concurrently with the audience's growing interest in the story that Howard was telling. Individuals who were intimately involved in the rescue attempts started to voice their worries, pointing out that Howard was either purposely spreading falsehoods or was misinformed about the situation. Because their brother, who was a pilot for the National Guard, had been flying 12-hour shifts to rescue people ever since the hurricane struck, the reader countered Howard's allegations. The reader said that their brother had been doing this since the hurricane struck. This person offered reports that were based on first-hand experience of the scenario. It was brought to the attention of others that there were military helicopters that were actively engaged in rescue operations. This brought to light the fact that Howard's statements were in direct opposition to the reality that they were experiencing at the time. There was a significant increase in the number of local individuals and responders who came out to correct the narrative in response to Howard's repeated charges. As they shared their personal experiences, they underlined that, contrary to Howard's assertions, the military and a variety of organizations were present and actively working to assist persons who were in need of assistance. In addition to the presence of members of the Army Corps of Engineers and the Marines on the ground, there were also volunteers from a number of states and even Canada who were offering assistance to the communities that were experiencing the consequences of the fighting. The locals underlined that although there was a continuing need for aid, particularly for shelter, food, and medical treatment, it was misleading to conclude that there was no support forthcoming from government agencies or charitable organizations. This was because there was a need for assistance. In particular, this was the case for those individuals who were in need of a destination.
On videos, people were calling him out. This person says, they, meaning the pilots, are working their asses off. My brother has been flying 12-hour days as North Carolina National Guard pilot every single day since Saturday, rescuing people. Another person says, you are at the Hickory Airport, because he's saying he doesn't see any of the helicopters. The military helicopters are all over at the Asheville Airport. We can see them all over the sky each day. Why are you purposely spreading this misinformation? Why can't we admit that the military and civilians are saving people in our mountain?
During the criminal trial of Donald Trump, which took place in Manhattan earlier this year, an incident occurred that added reality to these charges, making them even more difficult to accept. It was observed that a man who was presenting himself as a black New York union worker was delivering a speech in support of Trump outside of the courtroom. Vish Burra, a well-known MAGA operator who had previously worked as an assistant to Republican Representative George Santos and was also affiliated with Steve Bannon, was identified as the individual in issue after further inquiry revealed that he was the subject of the probe. It was quickly revealed that Burra had no ties to any union or job linked to unions, which added fuel to the flames of charges that Trump's campaign is manufacturing gestures of support. Burra's lack of ties to any union or work related to unions was exposed. The visit that President Trump made to a black church in Detroit was the impetus for yet another controversy that surfaced during his presence in the city. The event was billed as an outreach to the black community, yet reports indicate that a considerable proportion of individuals who came were not members of the congregation. This is despite the fact that the event occurred. On the other hand, the pews were crowded with white people who sympathized with Trump, and a significant number of them were observed sporting hats that spoke with the slogan, "Make America Great Again." A gathering that appeared to be precisely organized rather than an organic assembly of churchgoers or community members took place against the backdrop of the church, which was mired in a series of legal issues. The rally was held against the backdrop of the church. In spite of the fact that there was very little evidence of genuine support from the community, the campaign was accused of attempting to create the impression that it had support among black voters. This is a consequence of further criticism that was received. Further point to consider is that the controversy that has surrounded Trump's campaign has not yet been resolved. His campaign rented out a building in Clinton Township, Michigan, that was not unionized for the purpose of having an event. This was another troubling situation that occurred during his campaign. Attendees were photographed holding signs that proclaimed union workers for Trump while the event was taking place. However, it was later revealed that a considerable percentage of these individuals were not union members at all. The event, which had a total cost of $220,000 to put on, was intended to convey the idea that union workers were coming together in favor of Trump. This was the goal of the event. On the other hand, this turned out to be a deceptive statement, as it was found out that a significant number of the individuals who were supposed to be union workers did not have any connections associated with any unions. The events that took place in Scranton and Detroit are comparable to this one. In reaction to this pattern of dishonesty, the unions and workers that Trump claims to represent have voiced their outrage at the situation. The International Association of Firefighters and the United Automobile Workers are two examples of unions that have typically supported Democratic candidates. These unions have condemned these practices, branding them as deceptive and manipulative. Despite the fact that Trump has made attempts to present himself as the protector of blue-collar America, the disclosure of these fabricated events appears to imply that Trump's staff is having problems getting the actual support it depicts at rallies. This is the case despite the fact that Trump has made these efforts. It is possible that the influence that the media has had in this debate is another factor that gives cause for concern. The general coverage of these staged events in the national media has repeatedly failed to attract notice to them, despite the fact that local magazines such as the Times-Tribune in Scranton and the Detroit News have performed in-depth investigative reporting concerning the events in question. Those who believe that mainstream coverage has periodically allowed this to occur believe that the deceptive narrative that the working class and unions support Trump has been allowed to continue without appropriate scrutiny. Critics argue that this has been allowed to continue. Not only do these staged endorsements undermine the integrity of the democratic process, but they also trick voters into believing that their support for the candidates is more genuine than it actually is.
We're looking for like SOS carbon mud. That's how we found the 87-year-old woman that was about to run out of oxygen. But there's just a complete failure of weak leadership here in North Carolina in the federal government. And it takes my strong leadership in Florida to send us up here. If it wasn't for DeSantis sending the state guard special missions unit up here, this never even would have happened. But there's just no support here. There's no leadership. When we meet these locals on the ground, they're asking like, oh, you're from the state guard? And I'm like, oh, I'm from Florida. And they're like, where's North Carolina? You know, they're asking where their leadership is. They have no understanding of what's going on. And then we've even had officials here try to kick us out of Lake Lure, at a Chimney Rock. Nonsense stuff. They're asking me for my authorizations to be here. I mean, like, it's the most insane thing you would ever see. It's like they want these people to die.
Well, listen, I mean, there has to be some order. I get that. I understand that. But I just want to applaud you.
This request was made by a large number of people who lived inside the community that was destroyed by the storm. The damage, which included the destruction of houses, the disruption of lives, and the struggle of entire communities to find their footing following the event, was real and intensely felt by those who were affected by it. It is impossible to stress the significance of unity, support, and factual information during the continuing recovery operations that are currently taking place. In this turbulent period, it is extremely necessary to differentiate between fact and fiction, particularly in circumstances where people's lives are in immediate danger. This is especially true in situations where people will be killed. In order to ensure that the authentic story of their struggle and perseverance is heard, it is becoming increasingly vital for local communities and assistance groups to work together in order to underline the necessity of direct support and correct information. Collaboration is becoming increasingly important. As a consequence of the hurricane's impact, which extended far beyond the initial destruction, individuals who had been through such a horrific event faced adverse impacts on their mental health as well as their overall well-being. Therefore, as the recovery efforts develop, the focus must continue to be on offering support to one another, fostering collaboration across multiple bodies, and making sure that every voice within the community is heard and appreciated. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.